You know, modern folks, they tend to assume that warmth just comes from machines. But our grandparents, well, they understood that real warmth came from systems, not gadgets. Long before there was central heating, electric blankets, or even insulated drywall, households came up with these layered, repeatable methods to keep bodies warm all winter long, even in homes where, honestly, frost would form on the inside of the windows. These methods, they weren't accidental at all. They were learned through experience, refined over generations, and applied every single night with a sort of discipline. What we lost over time wasn't really technology. We lost knowledge. Our grandparents, they didn't bother heating whole rooms. Nope, they heated sleeping environments. And, you know, that distinction, it explains nearly everything. They went about designing the bed as a microclimate instead of, well, trying to heat up the entire room. Beds were treated as enclosed thermal zones. Those heavy wooden frames, tall headboards and footboards, those weren't just decorative, not at all. They actually blocked airflow. And, you'd find, many beds were set away from exterior walls and windows, since cold just radiates through masonry long after the fire's gone out. Whenever possible, beds were placed so that rising warmth from a stove or fireplace would drift toward the sleeping area before, you know, escaping upward. You know, today folks tend to heat entire bedrooms just to make up for heat loss they aren't really controlling. But our grandparents, well, they were clever. They focused on warming only the air right around their bodies. That simple idea still works, even now. Placing a bed away from those chilly exterior walls, blocking drafts down at the floor, and treating the bed itself like a sealed cocoon, all of that actually cuts heat loss far better than just cranking up the thermostat. Layered bedding, that was the trick. It trapped heat instead of letting it drift away. Older bedding systems were heavy, and there was a reason for that. Mattresses were filled with straw, wool, or horsehair, all materials that trap air but don't squish down too much. Then came the layers. A bottom sheet, a wool blanket, sometimes 2 or 3 more, and finally a heavy quilt or eiderdown on top. Each layer had its job. The sheet kept moisture at bay. Wool managed the temperature even if it got a bit damp. And the quilt? Well, it sealed all that warmth inside. These days, a lot of bedding is all about being light and looking nice, rather than actually keeping you warm. Synthetic duvets, for example, flatten out under your weight and let warm air slip away. But our grandparents, they knew that weight made a difference. When bedding compresses, it cuts down on air movement, and it's that still air that really holds the heat. Anyone today can do the same. Just layer up some dense wool blankets underneath your modern comforter instead of relying on just one insulated layer. One of the most misunderstood historical features is the bed curtain. These were not about privacy, you know. They were about survival. Curtains enclosed the bed on all sides, sometimes reaching all the way down to the floor. This prevented cold drafts from stripping heat away from the sleeper and, well, allowed body warmth to accumulate throughout the night. In unheated rooms, air movement is really the enemy. Even a slight draft can remove warmth faster than cold temperature alone. Modern equivalents are, honestly, simple and effective. Thick curtains behind and beside the bed, a fabric canopy, or even a temporary enclosure using heavy blankets can dramatically increase overnight warmth without adding any energy consumption. Night clothing was designed to work with bedding, not to replace it. Grandparents did not sleep in minimal clothing during winter, that's for sure. Night shirts were long, loose, and made of wool or flannel. Some folks wore bed socks specifically reserved for sleeping. Head coverings were common because, well, heat loss through the scalp is significant in cold environments. You know, modern sleepwear often prioritizes comfort over insulation, assuming that room heating will make up the difference. But in reality, sleeping in breathable yet insulating fabrics actually reduces the body's need to generate heat all night long. Wearing a wool base layer and insulating the head at night can honestly make a noticeable difference, even in homes that are already heated. Before electric blankets were around, folks would warm their beds quite deliberately. They'd use hot water bottles, heated bricks wrapped in cloth, or even metal bed warmers filled with embers, all placed under the covers before sleep. This bit of preparation raised the temperature of the bedding, so the body didn't have to waste precious energy warming up cold fabric. And you know, this practice is still one of the most effective low-tech solutions out there. Preheating the bed lets the body maintain its warmth instead of having to generate it from scratch. Just using a modern hot water bottle or a heated stone placed near the feet pretty much recreates this old system to a T. Bedrooms were closed, sealed, and treated as cold spaces by design. Unlike today's open-plan thinking, bedrooms were isolated spaces. Doors were closed, chimneys were damped, windows were covered with heavy drapes. Cold air was expected, not fought. People adapted their behavior instead of wasting fuel. Today, many people unknowingly undermine warmth by allowing air circulation meant for daytime living to continue at night. Closing doors, blocking unused vents and sealing drafts restores control over the sleeping environment. Body heat was conserved through routine and rhythm. Grandparents went to bed at consistent times and followed routines that supported warmth. Evening meals were heavier in winter, providing fuel for overnight metabolism. Physical activity before bed warmed the body naturally. Once warm, people stayed warm by avoiding unnecessary movement during the night. Modern lifestyles disrupt this rhythm, you know. Late meals, screen exposure, and irregular sleep interfere with the body's natural heat regulation. Returning to predictable routines enhances thermal stability during sleep without changing the environment at all. Wool, linen, wood, and natural fibers dominated the sleeping environment. These materials regulate moisture and temperature in ways synthetics just cannot. Moisture management is critical because, well, dampness accelerates heat loss. Grandparents avoided sweating at night because they understood that moisture meant cold. Replacing synthetic bedding with natural fibers immediately improves warmth retention. Wool blankets, cotton sheets, and wooden bed frames all contribute to thermal balance without any mechanical assistance. None of these practices require abandoning modern life. They require changing priorities. Heating the bed instead of the room, layering intelligently, blocking airflow, using weight and density, and respecting the body's heat production cycle all work now exactly as they did a century ago. People who apply even half of these methods often discover they sleep warmer at lower room temperatures than before. That is not nostalgia. That is physics and biology working together. Grandparents slept warmer because they were not dependent on uninterrupted energy systems. Their warmth came from knowledge, materials, and routine. In any situation where fuel, electricity, or infrastructure is unreliable, these skills become essential again. Understanding how to create warmth without machines is not a historical curiosity. It is practical preparedness. If this kind of grounded, usable history matters to you, subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles. Share this with others who value skills over convenience and knowledge over assumptions. The past still works if you know how to use it.